Welcome to HFY Stories. Please subscribe to the channel. Your one click means the world to me. The white boundary stripe burned cold against Ethan Vale's palm as he pushed himself off the embassy floor. Across the circular space, his opponent stayed perfectly balanced, not even breathing hard, while hundreds of spectators waited to see whether he would rise again. 3 months earlier, Ethan's biggest problem had been a desk. Catherine stood beside it before class, one hand resting on the chair Ethan had used since term began. "Choose another place," she said. Ethan set his bag down. "My name is on this one." Kate's pale eyes narrowed. She had arrived from Cathra Prime only weeks before, already surrounded by stories about impossible reflexes, crushed training drones, and a homeworld that punished hesitation. Most students gave her room without being asked. Ethan did not. "You paused before answering," she said. "On Cathra, uncertainty means you surrender the claim. Then Earth has different rules." Around them, conversations died. Marcus leaned back to watch. Vec, the insected student too, rose over, clicked softly. Alyssa's blue vapor form drifted farther from the aisle. Kaith lifted Ethan's bag from the chair and dropped it beside the desk. Mrs. Halden entered before the argument could become anything worse. "Seats, both of you." Kaith moved away at last. Ethan sat. As she passed, he added, "Tomorrow this is still my desk." That earned him a look that followed him through the entire lesson. After class, Kaith blocked the corridor. "You made me yield in front of witnesses." "I stayed where I was. Where I come from, those are the same thing." She pressed a palm into his chest and shoved him back half a step. Students slowed. Someone raised a phone. Ethan should have walked away. Instead, he pushed her shoulders. Kaith moved before he could regret it. She caught his wrist, turned him, and forced him toward the lockers. Ethan dropped his weight and drove forward, breaking her grip. Metal boomed when they struck the wall. She recovered instantly and came again. He was slower, weaker, less trained. But he kept ruining the clean ending she expected. When she drove him down, he rolled. When she trapped an arm, he twisted free. When he managed to drag her off balance, surprise flashed across her face. Then Kaith reversed him and pinned him flat, her forearm braced across his upper chest. "Say you concede." Ethan's lungs burned. His wrist throbbed. Students packed both sides of the hallway, silent now. He looked straight at her. "I can't beat you." Her expression sharpened, almost satisfied. He finished, "That doesn't mean I'm giving in." For the first time, Kaith froze. The words seemed to strike somewhere deeper than the fight itself. Her grip remained firm, but the certainty left her face. "Why?" "Because losing and surrendering are not the same thing." Mrs. Halden's voice cracked across the corridor. "Enough." Kaith released him at once. Ethan got up more slowly. The dented lockers, scattered papers, and ring of stunned students suddenly came back into focus. Mrs. Halden pointed toward the administration wing. "My office, now." Kaith walked beside Ethan without speaking. Twice he caught her looking at him, not angrily, but as though he had become a problem she could not solve. The vice principal's office already held another surprise. A tall, silver-haired Caithran stood beside the desk in formal robes. Kaith stopped so abruptly Ethan nearly walked into her. "Father." The man studied Ethan's bruised jaw, then his daughter. The vice principal began an apology, but the visitor lifted one hand. "I am Ambassador Ven. I came because Kaith's biometric monitor registered a combat state response, severe enough to alert our embassy." Ethan glanced at her. "Your school fights notify diplomats." Kaith looked away. The ambassador asked what had happened. The vice principal started with the desk. Kaith interrupted. "He would not submit after I had restrained him." Ambassador Ven's attention sharpened. "You had complete control." "Yes." And he understood he could not win. Ethan answered for himself, very clearly. The ambassador became still. "That creates a cultural complication." Within an hour, Priya Agarwal, an interspecies relations officer, arrived, followed by school liaison staff and Caithran officials. Ethan sat with an ice pack against his face, while adults debated a custom older than several Earth nations. Priya finally translated it into terms he could understand. Among certain Cathran families, a challenger who knowingly faces defeat yet refuses to submit may be recognized as a rival of equal standing. If the other person chooses not to force a final submission, the recognition becomes formal. Ethan frowned. Formal how? The ambassador answered carefully. Not a marriage, not an obligation of affection, a bond of recognized status between rivals, with the possibility of deeper ties only if both later choose them. Ethan stared at Kaith. She stared at the floor. There must be a way out. There is, Kaith said. Publicly state that the contest proved nothing. Say you yield the claim, and the recognition ends. Her voice was flat, but her hands had curled tight at her sides. Ethan noticed. What happens to you? Nothing. The answer came too quickly. Priya glanced between them, but said nothing. Ethan leaned back, ice pack slipping against his cheek. He had spent his whole life avoiding attention. Now a stupid argument had become a diplomatic matter because, for once, he had refused the easier exit. He looked at the ambassador. I'm not withdrawing. Kaith finally raised her head. You have no idea what that may invite. Probably not. Challenges, public scrutiny, people testing whether you deserve the recognition. Ethan gave a tired shrug. Then I'll learn. Something almost like a smile touched Kaith's face before she hid it. The consequences arrived quickly. Challenges appeared on Ethan's tablet. Students he barely recognized suddenly knew his name. Vec began greeting him with an awkward formal bow. Alyssa asked for an interview. Priya scheduled meetings to keep Ethan from accidentally creating an interplanetary incident. One challenge mattered more than the others. Threxel, a formerly trained Caithran noble, wanted the claim tested before witnesses. Kaith found Ethan outside the academy after he read it. Do not accept. You think I'll lose. I know you'll keep standing after you should stop. That answer quieted him. Kaith folded her arms. Threxel has trained since childhood. What happened between us was uncontrolled. This would not be. Ethan looked across the courtyard. I'm not trying to prove humans are stronger than Caithrans. Then what are you trying to prove? That strength isn't the only thing people should measure. The idea followed him through meetings with visiting Caithrans, including Toki, a young student who seemed more curious than hostile. Toki asked whether all humans were as stubborn. Ethan told him he doubted it. Then he reconsidered. Maybe most people have a line they discover only when someone tries to push them across it. Weeks later, Priya confirmed that the challenge had grown into a diplomatic summit. Representatives from Earth, Caithra, and several other harsh-world species would attend. Ethan accepted, which brought him back to the white stripe beneath his hand. The embassy chamber rose around him in a vast dome. Threxel waited several meters away, disciplined and controlled. Kaith stood near the arena boundary in formal blue robes, jaw clenched. The signal sounded. Threxel dropped Ethan almost immediately. He rose. The second exchange ended harder. His breath vanished for several seconds. He rose again. By the fourth fall, the chamber had stopped murmuring. Kaith took one involuntary step toward the floor before an official blocked her path. Threxel's confidence had changed too. She no longer looked amused. Another exchange. Ethan hit the floor. His arms shook as he pushed to one knee. Threxel did not advance. You have shown enough, she said. Stop. Ethan looked at the watching delegations. He could hear his own breathing and the faint hum of the ceiling lights. I never came here to defeat you. Then there is nothing left to gain. There is. He forced himself upright. Threxel's hands lowered slightly. Ethan swallowed against the ache in his throat. You can prove I'm slower. You can prove I'm weaker. You already did. But you don't get to prove that fear makes my decisions for me. Silence spread through the hall. Threxel studied him for several long seconds. Will you submit? Ethan shook his head once. No. Threxel stepped out of her stance. Then before the entire chamber, she bowed. I concede the test. Noise broke across the seats. Ethan stared at her. You were winning. Yes. You were winning easily. Yes. Then why stop? Threxel looked toward the gathered Kathrans before answering. Because I came here thinking our tradition honored power. You reminded me that it was built to recognize resolve. Ambassador Ven rose from his place among the officials. Even before he spoke, Ethan saw Kaith moving. She crossed the floor, ignoring protocol, and stopped directly in front of him. You are unbearable. Ethan managed a tired grin. You came all this way to tell me that. I came to make certain you were still standing. She looked over his shoulder toward Threxel, then back at him. You weren't. After the summit, the challenges mostly became invitations. Cultural exchanges replaced combat requests. Toki kept visiting the academy. Threxel sent Ethan a formal request to continue their discussions. Priya complained that her schedule had doubled, though she smiled when she said it. Months later, Mrs. Haldon replaced the worn attendance labels in Ethan's classroom. Kaith reached the room first and took the desk that had started everything. Ethan stopped beside her. She raised one eyebrow. Problem. He glanced at the empty chair beside hers and sat without argument. Mrs. Haldon pressed 2 fresh name strips onto the desk corners. Caithren. Ethan Vale. The bell rang. Around them, chairs shifted and tablets lit. Kaith tapped once on his desk with 2 fingers, then opened her lesson file. Ethan opened his beside hers.